Why naval warships control your grocery prices. You wake up, check the market prices, and see your grocery bill creeping higher. Rice, eggs, cooking oil, all costing more than last month. Why? It might feel like inflation, supply issues, or just bad luck. But actually, your grocery prices are not just shaped in farms or store shelves. They are shaped on the open sea, where warships cruise, trade routes weave, and national power decides who eats and who pays more. This isn't a conspiracy or a metaphor. This is real geopolitics. This is the hidden truth about how sea power, the strength of navies, and control of maritime routes reaches all the way to your dinner table. Today, you're going to see the world not from the supermarket, but from the deck of a warship, patrolling the ocean lanes that carry 80% of global trade. The ocean, not just water, but the world's arteries. Imagine a system of arteries running across the globe. Instead of blood, they carry goods, food, fuel, steel, electronics, and the grains that feed billions. These arteries are the sea lines of communication, the shipping routes that crisscross the oceans, connecting producers with consumers, exporting farmers with families far away. Over 80% of global trade by volume and more than 70% by value travels these maritime highways. That means when a drought ruins a harvest, markets explain it. When ports slow down, retailers complain. But when the sea lanes are disrupted, everything everywhere becomes more expensive. Food from one side of the world shipped to the other keeps global prices low. But break the sea routes, and suddenly scarcity, distance, and cost rise like storm tides. So the vital question is, who protects these arteries, and who can disrupt them? Sea power, the invisible force. Behind global trade for centuries, nations understood a simple truth. Whoever controls the sea controls the trade. Whoever controls trade controls wealth and survival. This was no academic idea. It was the central strategy of empires, and the numbers show just how fundamentally important maritime dominance is to the world economy. Over 80% of global merchandise trade by volume and more than 70% by value are transported by sea today. Specifically, about 11.6 billion metric tons of goods were loaded worldwide for maritime trade in 2023 alone, a figure that dwarfs the capacity of air and land transport combined and underpins the modern connection between security and prosperity. In the age of sail, the British Royal Navy dominated the oceans. Its warships didn't just fight battles. They protected trade, secured supply lines, and ensured that British merchants could move goods cheaply across the globe. This was the heart of British power: block an enemy's access to sea lanes, protect your own trade fleets, starve enemy markets, enrich your own economy. Today, that is not just history, it's economics. Modern shipping is far larger and more sophisticated than even the grandest fleets of old. Approximately 80 to 90% of global trade is carried by sea, making maritime transport by far the most cost-effective mode for moving goods internationally. This includes everything from raw materials like iron ore and energy commodities to finished products like electronics and consumer goods. Containerized shipping alone accounts for nearly 60% of global trade by value, and the global maritime industry generates roughly $920 billion in annual revenue, with over 50,000 merchant ships in operation worldwide and major chokepoints such as the Strait of Hormuz, through which around 21 million barrels daily, roughly 21% of global oil consumption transit, highlighting just how critical maritime routes are to economic stability and prosperity. Disruption in these waters, whether from conflict, piracy, or geopolitical tensions, can ripple outward, slowing growth and triggering cost spikes across continents. Nearly 80% of the world's fertilizer and grain supplies, food products, and industrial commodities are routed through maritime transport, meaning that a blockade or denial of sea access anywhere along major routes would ripple into price increases, shortages, and economic volatility worldwide. control the sea, and you control the trade that fuels industry, feeds populations, and creates wealth. And that's why oceans remain a domain of strategic centrality in both peace and war. Why warships matter more than you think. Most people think of warships as guns and armor symbols of national power. But their real job in peacetime is equally critical: protect the flow of commercial goods across the oceans. Because without secure shipping, pirate attacks rise. Insurance and freight costs explode. Routes slow or detour. Trade contracts unravel. Prices increase. For instance, in the Gulf of Aden off Somalia, piracy once shot up shipping costs so much that freight rates ballooned by 300%, plus directly inflating the cost of goods carried along that route. Straits, canals, and price shock points. Some places are tiny, but their influence is gigantic. The Strait of Malacca, narrow, strategic, and vital. This passage connects the Indian Ocean with the Pacific. Every year, over 90,000 vessels pass through it, carrying nearly 23.7% of global trade, including food staples, oil, and agricultural commodities. If this choke point is threatened or blocked, even temporarily, ships have to detour thousands of extra miles. That means higher fuel costs, longer transit time, higher freight rates, higher prices at your local market. The Panama Canal, a shortcut linking the Atlantic and Pacific, reducing weeks of journey time and saving millions in shipping costs. Even small disruptions here ripple outwards, affecting global commodity prices. Strait of Hormuz, a narrow choke point where roughly 21 million barrels daily, 21% of global seaborne oil flows every day. When tensions flare here, energy prices spike. And since fuel is a huge portion of food transport costs, grocery prices rise too. These passages are like toll gates on the supermarket supply chain. If traffic flows smoothly, prices stay stable. If ships slow, stop, or reroute, your grocery bill becomes the toll. Blockades, war, and price inflation. Control of sea lanes isn't just strategic, it's economic leverage. History shows that navies disrupted trade to starve economies and raise prices on the enemy. During World War II, the Allied blockade of Germany restricted food and materials entering the country. Food shortages and rationing became desperate consequences of sea control, not just battlefield outcomes. During this blockade, Germany's food imports dropped to roughly 20% of pre-war levels, driving widespread shortages and surging prices as staple goods became scarce. Today, even the threat of disruption can sharply raise shipping insurance in the Black Sea region. Alone, premiums have jumped by up to 250%, and freight costs have doubled or more on key routes, feeding directly into higher consumer costs. Globalization depends on the sea. Globalization isn't an abstract force. It's anchored to containers floating across ocean. Over 80% of global merchandise trade by volume and more than 70% by value are transported by sea, with nearly 60% of global trade value carried in containerized shipments. From electronics to soybeans, from crude oil to coffee, almost everything travels by sea, the cheapest way to move goods over long distances. In total, global seaborne trade recently exceeded 11 billion tons, reflecting just how much of the economy depends on secure sea routes. When warships protect sea lanes, trade flows freely, and prices stay stable. When naval presence weakens, freight rates spike, and grocery prices follow. That's why global stability and affordable groceries share the same foundation: secure sea lanes, the new geopolitical chessboard. Now imagine this tension. Major powers investing in navies, not just to fight wars, but to control or influence trade routes. China's concern over the Strait of Malacca's vulnerability, known as the Malacca Dilemma, drives Beijing to seek alternative routes and increased maritime presence. It's not about fleets showing off, it's about ensuring energy and food imports never get cut off. And other nations increasingly recognize that naval power is economic power. Because if sea lanes become contested, whether by military conflict, piracy, tariffs, or blockades, global trade doesn't shrink gracefully. It explodes in cost. And that explosion lands on your grocery bill. Major strategic waterways like the Strait of Malacca carry nearly 23.7% of global seaborne trade and over $2.8 trillion in annual cargo, while the Strait of Hormuz handles about 21% of global seaborne oil exports, roughly 21 million barrels per day. When instability cuts traffic through the Suez Canal by as much as 50% and adds thousands of miles to voyages, the cost doesn't stay at sea. It ripples into higher freight rates, longer deliveries, and inflated prices in stores worldwide. Join the journey. If this video changed how you see the world from grocery aisles to global sea lanes, you're not alone. There is more beneath the surface than meets the eye. Subscribe to Warzone Masters for breakdowns exposing how global power actually works. Not headlines, but the hidden forces beneath them. Like if you want more connections between geopolitics and your daily life. Comment below. Do you think naval power should be considered part of economic policy, not just defense? I'll see you in the next one.